Hello again, everyone. I'm Dr. George Simon, and welcome to another edition of the new Character Matters program. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we've been in for some time now, and that has affected every aspect of our lives, and more especially what we can do to turn things around, to at least restore the importance of character to its rightful place in our lives, and to all do our best to encourage it, and especially to reinforce it in ourselves and in one another, so that we can usher in a more civil, genuinely peaceful, and more loving community. We human beings are meant to live in communities. We do better that way. We haven't always. It's part of our evolution. And our evolution has been stunted in some ways and maybe even regressed in some ways because of the culture of entitlement that we have been in for some time now. And it has spawned an increase in both the prevalence of narcissism and the more serious types of narcissism. As I mentioned in my books, contrary to a lot of the information that's out there on the internet and in other books, narcissism is a phenomenon that's on a spectrum, much like other human conditions. It varies as to type and degree. And the culture of entitlement that we've been in for several years and that has spawned such an explosion of narcissism was once reserved for a certain elite among us, the privileged elite. It was not uncommon, for example, several decades ago, for all kinds of things that are commonplace in society today to be more common in, say, Hollywood circles among the rich and famous and privileged. We would read about certain things that most people would react with some shock and horror about. But the culture of entitlement has extended well beyond those limited circles, and that's why we have such an increase in the problems associated with narcissism. And in my books, I talk about the importance of gratitude. In my latest book, Essentials for the Journey, I make a particular point about that. Everything in life is, by nature, temporary. There are certain things that we can cultivate that last forever, but that requires an incredible degree of mindfulness, genuine love, genuine commitment. These things are lasting and enduring because they require a movement of the heart. But most things in life, including life itself, are temporary happenstances. And how we regard those things makes all the difference in the world. How we regard this very life makes all the difference in the world. How we regard our relationships. How we regard all of the things that we have been given and that we enjoy makes all the difference. We can't even begin, however, to cultivate proper attitudes of gratitude without coming to a great awareness of the bigger picture, without coming to realize at a very deep level that we are all part of something more vast, something more incredible than we can possibly wrap our rational minds around. And that, as I mentioned in my latest book, Essentials for the Journey, is the very first, what I call commandment of solid character development. Cultivating that awareness, basically training yourself to become mindful and to stay mindful of the bigger picture, seeing ourselves and each other in relationship to something very, very grand, profound. That's the beginning. Of course, that's not sufficient to develop any gratitude. We have to come to appreciate the very tenuous nature of everything that we have and how precious it is. There have been times, magical times, I would say, when in the high altitude country of the West, away from light pollution, gazing at the incredible, dazzling sky, I've just become more deeply aware that we are swirling through the universe on this planet in what on one level seems a very predictable, stable course, and on quite another level seems very precarious. We are totally dependent upon that incredible thermonuclear reaction going on in our sun for life itself on this planet and on all the things that grow, that help sustain us. And we've not been very good stewards. Now, I'm not wanting to get into a political discussion here about just how we respect this incredible gift. But regardless of how you look at it, one thing that's virtually undeniable, of course you can't attempt to deny it, but one thing that's virtually undeniable is that none of us is responsible for this. None of us earned any of it. But attitudes like that, attitudes like this precious gift is somehow earned and deserved. And so we're free to do whatever we want and act however we want, self-servingly and without regard to the impact of our behavior on anyone or anything else is the scourge of our times. And as I mentioned earlier, these kinds of attitudes were once limited to the privileged elite, but they are much more rampant now. We enjoy a lot, and we take a lot for granted. Now, because narcissism is a spectrum phenomenon, and because it has become so pervasive, it is natural that certain egregious forms of it would have developed. And the sad truth of our times is that the most serious, the most malignant forms of narcissism have become so commonplace. People act with such indifference, such callousness, such outright disdain for this gift, without any sense of obligation, without any sense of care. People do that so commonly and so egregiously these days that we have become all too uncomfortably used to it. It has become the new normal. And you hear a lot of talk about sustainability issues these days. This road that we've been on for some time is unsustainable. Nature has built into it certain naturally corrective mechanisms. We push too far in one direction, and nature inevitably pushes back. But we have choices. We don't have to go along with the trend. And as I've mentioned in several articles on my blog at drgeorgesimon.com and mentioned in all my books, the change always starts with us. We are going to usher out this age of rampant narcissism the same way that it got ushered in, slowly, incrementally, one heart at a time, beginning with our own. Now, as I mentioned in my last podcast, socialization, the process by which we human beings learn to get along with one another, learn how to relate to one another in ways that are helpful and constructive and emotionally and psychologically healthy. That process takes longer for us than for any other creatures on the planet. It's a long, painstaking, arduous process that involves many players over many years with many important life lessons to be learned. And I outline those important life lessons that not only have to be learned, but taken to heart and made a part of a person. I outline them in my new book, Essentials for the Journey. I first introduced them in my book, Character Disturbance, years ago, and they are crucial to the development of what we call good character. Sadly, these lessons have been harder to learn than ever, especially in the cultural climate that we've had over the past several years. A climate that, as I mentioned earlier, was once only commonplace within a certain subset of our culture. So healthy socialization is now a more challenging enterprise than it's ever been. But still, it's the most important challenge of all. It's what we're all called to. We all have it within us to be persons of great integrity. But we have to be fairly brutally honest with ourselves, about ourselves, and with each other about each other. We have to humbly and honestly reckon with all of our shortcomings, our fears, our misgivings, our predispositions, our biases, our prejudices. We have to reckon with a large number of things. And we have to do a much better job of guiding our young people, a much better job of modeling for them and encouraging in them the development of the principles that time and history has told us are absolutely essential for the development of sound character, which is absolutely essential to the fabric of a healthy society, a healthy world. And that, in a nutshell, is my life's work. It's my overriding message. It's why I do everything I do, from the workshops to the consultations with individuals and organizations, to my books, to my blog articles. Everything I do is geared toward the same end. Let's all resolve to make character matter again. Let's make it cool again. Let's make it count. And the way to do that the best is to claim it's important for ourselves, starting with the very first commandment that I talk about in Essentials for the Journey. Heightening our awareness, seeing the bigger picture, contemplating it, digesting it, sitting with it and taking some time to ponder not only this marvelous experience, but how inextricably interconnected we are and how everything we do has impact. And we're all capable of making a positive impact. And sometimes because of the age in which we live and the heartaches that we have inevitably had to suffer in this character-disturbed world of ours, sometimes making that effort, making the deliberate choice to be the kind of person we can be, requires true heroism. It's hard, especially when you've been hurt, traumatized, taken advantage of, beaten down. It's hard to find the heart care and to love. So I'll be talking about that a little bit more on the next edition of the New Character Matters, and I hope you'll tune in. I hope you'll also take advantage of my books, readily available, all of them on Amazon, and of the numerous free articles on my blog at drgeorgesimon.com. Until next time, I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.